what's interesting is that I made the decision to not script what I was going to say when I did these talks. I could have done. And in many ways I did a lot of notes and preparation, but in the end I thought I won't script it because I want to leave it open to see what comes. I've got the title that Danielle read out before, this not confusing the channel with the source and knowing what we're on this earth to do. That's the title of today's session. But even that guided visualization of the grounding, before I opened my mouth, I didn't know that's what I was going to say. And I'm really touched, I feel very moved, that they're the words that came forward to be spoken, because this is something I feel really strongly and passionately about, is that we have come down the ancestral line that we've come down, although it might bring with it quirks and flaws and eccentricities that we have to work through. Actually, we are at the vanguard of creation, in the sense that all that's gone before, all the collective experience of humanity and all the collective experience of this planet that's gone before us is at our back. And that's such a rich vein of experience, knowledge, trial and error. People have tried, people have failed, people have grown, people have expanded. It's not to be ignored when we talk about working a spiritual life or working a spiritual program, because we can't separate ourselves from our roots. And similarly, often when people talk about spirituality, they almost talk as if the heavenly white hosts of angels is what spirituality is about, and the stuff to do with the earth and practicalities and work and money and sex, and that it's somehow grubby, dirty, not to be touched. It's separate from that white light spirituality which we achieve through meditating in caves in the Himalayas. And I want to challenge that. Maybe I don't need to challenge that. It is to be challenged by all of us if what we want to do is to be happy in this life, in this incarnation, doing work in the here and now on this planet. Because there is a certain abstaining of responsibility when we retreat into spirituality for its own sake, and we don't bring our power to bear on the earth for the good of the earth, for the good of humanity, fully present in our bodies, living out of our root, living out of our base chakras, living out of the red, the blood, the sweat, the realities, the visceral realities of what it is to be a human being. So that idea that we might start with visualising about being connected to the earth and being connected to our ancestry has given me a sense of, yes, this is where we're going with these talks. I mean, I have a vague notion of where I'm going, but, it's been kind of meandering so far. Now let's bring it into practical reality here. Let's start to get real. And next week's talk is about affirmations, and that's going to build on what I say today. Because the two topics that I've put forward are equally important when it comes to how are we going to bring about what we want in our lives, or what it is that God's will is for us. And hopefully we're at the point of saying, well, what I want in my life is God's will for me. So they should be more or less aligned, but we'll come to that. How do we bring it about? Knowledge of what we might like is in itself not going to happen without action. So the first point of the talk is to talk about not confusing the channel with the source. And this is something that, from my own experience, I know that I lose my power. So the previous two talks, last couple of weeks, we've talked about where am I placing my power. I personally can talk from experience of placing my power in that pays me. So I have made my work and the pursuit of a salary a mini god. I have worshipped my job and my money, and I have given my power away to it. And ironically, it gave me a false sense of power to have work and money, to the extent that I kind of thought that I was a mini god in my world. You know, I was in a managerial position, and I had a mortgage, and I had a house and a car, and I was the god of my world. And I feel that it's really important when we feel depleted by or stuck or lost in life, is to ask the question, where am I placing my power? And if we're talking about money, work, prosperity, but also if we're talking about relationships and health, which also come into prosperity, often we're placing power in the hands of other people or in circumstances. So if that person was to behave differently, then I would be happy. If that circumstance was different, then I would be happy. So my power is placed externally when I say that. But when we give our power to people, when we, I know this because I'm self-employed, if my clients don't pay me on time, I can become very fixated on that client and say, why are you not paying me? I need you to pay me. If you don't pay me, I can't pay my rent. And I get stuck into this trough or trench of that person needs to pay me. And I'm saying that they are the source of my money. And the important thing to remember in those circumstances is that they are not the source of the wealth. The source of wealth is the source with a capital S. It's the creator, it's the abundance, it's the power and magnificence of the universe. It's that created all life. It's that knows and that we cannot know. It's the unknowable. It's the beloved, it's the infinite. And when I fall into a pattern or a trap of thinking that my money comes from that individual or that job or this circumstance or whatever, then what I do is I limit my thinking. And we touched on this last week about the power of thoughts. I limit my thinking into a channel, into a trough. I become entrenched in this very short-sighted view. And when I do that, I lose the strategic view. I lose the bigger picture and become concerned with chasing the pound. How am I going to make ends meet? How am I going to find money? In the trench of work and effort and striving, and there not being enough, and I need to have it, and if I don't get that money, then I'm not going to be able to eat. And it becomes stressful, incredibly stressful. And all that we've talked about to now, about worthiness and self-esteem and flow and prosperity thinking, when we're in the prosperous state, things aren't that difficult. Difficult things can be happening, but we are not emotionally invested in the difficulty because we have the strategic view of it. We have that distance that we were talking about that comes from meditating, putting some distance between myself and the thought. We're able to rise ourselves out of the trench mentality, and have a look from a strategic point of view that just says there's a bigger picture here. There's a bigger picture, and in obsessing or fixating on this or this as the source of my income, I am narrowing my horizons. So the power comes from releasing those poor souls from the responsibility of being God and opening our aspect out, opening up the horizon, lifting our head from the trench and looking around and seeing there is infinitely more to this world, and the source of our abundance and prosperity is infinitely more powerful than any one human being or any one job or any one institution. So that's the first thing, really. And I've mentioned her name before, Catherine Ponder, who's one of the greatest prosperity teachers. And she puts together these really convoluted, rather archaic languaged affirmations that I love. And if I think you actually all are Facebook friends with me. I always share and post when people put her affirmations on Facebook because they're just brilliant. I like the fact that they're confusing language because it kind of takes me out of myself, because I have to just surrender to the fact that she knew what she was talking about. And I have a list of her affirmations, and the first one on the list is: I do not depend upon persons or conditions for my prosperity. I bless persons and conditions as channels of my prosperity, but God is the source of my supply. God provides his own amazing channels of supply to me now. And I just put in brackets that the use of his for God is not my own belief system, but that's Catherine, so we'll let her have it. So this idea that we need to, just release people from the responsibility of being the gods and the providers in our lives, and trust. It's that trust and faith that if we lift our head up, the horizon gets so much bigger, and that money can come in from any direction. Work can come in from any direction if what we want is work, and that's going to be the second part of the talk. A lot of us who become entrenched because we don't feel that we have enough. I've heard this time and time again because I work with so many people who have this same entrenched mentality, that we really buy into this idea that me plus work equals money. That equation, me plus work equals money, drives us all out of the door in the morning to go and work like Trojans to get our salary. And it's not wrong to think like that, because there's a truth to it. Me plus work does equal money. But if that again becomes a trench that I become fixed in, then I don't allow abundance and prosperity to flow from all the four corners of the universe. Now, if there was actually a direct correlation between work and money, then the people on this planet who work the hardest would be the richest. But I don't need to cite any examples of how the richest people on this planet are not the hardest workers. The street cleaners and the nurses and the teachers and the office workers and the people who work down mines in Africa, who, they are working. If there was a correlation between work and money, they would be wealthy. And there's people living off, Greece in yachts, who, really, they may work. They might work in the city. They might, they might be investors. They might have done work. I'm not taking away from them the fact they've done work. But the amount of work that they do doesn't correlate to the amount of wealth that they've got. What does correlate is the extent to which people believe they're worthy. So the wealthy of this world believe they're worthy. If I got my tongue in, get my false teeth in properly, the wealthy of this world believe they're worthy. And they are open and willing to receive money, work, I don't even want to say the word work, money, prosperity, coming from all different angles. When you have, if any of us had multi-million pounds in the bank, what would be the work that we would do? Because those people who have millions and millions in the bank, they still work. But surely they're doing work that's meaningful to them, that they love, because they don't have to work, because they've got enough money. That's the question for me. That's what I want to ask myself. If I had millions and millions of pounds, what would be the work that I would do? And I am happy to report that the work that I do as a minister is the work that I would do if I had millions and millions of pounds. I would still do what I do. I love it. Absolutely love it. And that brings us on to the question about what are we on this earth to do? Because surely prosperity and living in the prosperity consciousness entails a sense of joy and a sense of lightness, a sense of purpose and a sense of meaning. What am I on this earth to do? And I'm sure we've all heard that Joseph Campbell, who famously said, "Follow your bliss. Follow your bliss." So I'm going to just ask you the question and just in silence, take a couple of moments to see what spontaneously comes up for you. I am happiest when I... I am happiest when I... The last time I felt joyful, really joyful, I was doing what? When did I last feel fired up by a cause? What is the point of suffering in this world that affects me the most? Who do I feel called to help above all others? And if I had millions of pounds in the bank, what would I do to give my life meaning? And these kind of questions are just, if you don't have answers, please don't feel like that's going to hinder you in any way, because they come. It comes in time. I remember a couple of years ago being challenged like this, to think, follow your bliss, where's your joy? And at the time, I felt so depressed that it depressed me, that I couldn't think about where my joy was, where my bliss was. I was like, life's shit. And I wasn't able to answer those kind of questions. It came with time. And what the process, my own healing journey with prosperity required me to do was to nurture a tender sensitivity to the joys of life. Because when I'm in the trench mentality, when I'm in the poverty mentality, there doesn't seem to be joy and I can't feel gratitude. So in nurturing a sense of gratitude, I plug into a sense of joy. If I sit on a bus and there's a child on the bus and they are just cackling with laughter, that joyous, free-form laughter that just comes spontaneously out of children. And instead of being irritated by the noise, I get transported by their joy. If I'm alive to that moment, then I'm in my bliss. If I can take a moment to just be grateful for that moment, then I'm in bliss. So that's something very practical that any of us can do at any given time, is to be consciously mindful as we go through our day of where is the bliss, where is the joy, what is lighting my fire, what makes me feel good, what am I grateful for? And the question that a lot of people ask is, what is my higher purpose? What is God's will for me? And it is my own personal belief system and my personal experience that God communicates to me what my purpose is in life by giving me desires, not I think I have to be discerning, so discernment is important. Discerning about the difference between eating an entire chocolate cake, which feels like a desire, which is actually a compulsion, and a desire to be of service, to connect to human beings, to feel at one with humanity and the earth. But I've just realised as I'm saying that the compulsion that I might have to eat the chocolate cake has within it a message. If I want to eat comfort food, I am seeking rest. I am seeking comfort. I am seeking sweetness. I am seeking tenderness. So even if I can acknowledge to myself that behaviour and that action is detrimental to my overall spiritual health, I can still listen to the message within it that tells me what it is I'm seeking. I'm seeking sweetness, tenderness, softness, security, peace. That's what I find within cake, and I can find that elsewhere when I'm aware of it. But through a sense of desire to be of service, to love other people, to be loved, to connect, to take whatever creative craft or vision or anything that we've got that we're innately good at, to carry that forward into the world is the purpose of life, really, is to bring that to bear. And I think that's something for all of us to just really go away and think about, to just map out for ourselves where the joy is in life. And if we recognise that we take joy in negative behaviours, what is it within that behaviour that we're seeking? And when we know that, how can we find that in healthy ways? How can we find that in new ways? How can we find that expression? So just to summarise, I have every intention of bringing the talk in as close to 20 minutes this week as I can. To summarise, we've moved out of what was perhaps feeling a little bit abstract, a little bit wishy-washy about the worthiness and the sense of, coming into our power and where am I placing my power. We're starting to bring the lesson into the practical. And like I say, we're going to move on. Next week, we're going to talk about the power of actually training the mind to bring to bear what we wish for the world. But at this point, we need to be really aware of what our dreams and hopes and visions are. And that might be a homework task for the week, is to really think about that. But we certainly come up against, when we do connect with our dream, connect with our vision, there's always going to be that part of us, the poverty consciousness that rises to say, not sure. Yeah, you think you know what you want, but do you really? Actually, who are you to want that? That's too big a vision for you, little person. Stay small. And my advice to myself, as well as to you, as to anybody else who might listen to this, is to understand, as I said last week, we are not our thoughts. We are not our feelings. We are not our emotions. So through taking time to meditate, to breathe, to objectively observe that rises in us, we can start to map out the inner landscape that tells us where we're going. It's a little recce within where we say, okay, here's my dreams and visions. Here are the voices that are rising to say that I can't have them. Here's the feelings that arise. We don't have to engage on a dramatic level with them. We can just observe them. When we observe them, we become aware of them, and we can choose where we put our power. So for this week, that's where I'm going to end it. Next week, we're going to talk about actually aligning our thoughts through positive prayer, meditation, affirmation, aligning our thoughts behind the positive in such a way that doesn't create conflict with those voices that are saying you can't do it, that just says, hey, voice, you've got a right, but this is a bigger right. I have a right to be everything that I want to be. So I hear you, and I hear that you're trying to keep me safe, but I promise you, I'm all right, And that's the upward spiral. So this week, we're going to be really grateful for the little things. Seek out the joy, notice the light shining on water, notice the laughter around us, notice the good in life. And I often write, when I'm writing, I write the word good with a capital G, because for me, the healing comes when I see the good in all situations, and I think that is a sense of God. When I can find good in a really difficult situation, therein lies a sense of the divine. So seeing the good, being grateful, feeling the bliss, feeling the joy, what makes me happy, asking those questions. That's the work now that will take us forward into next week. So that's where I'm going to stop it. 24 minutes. So I'm stopping recording.